Hello, welcome to the meeting tent, an ongoing series on the work of Stan Tenen. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our usual cast of characters: Levana Tenen, Adele Packer, Daniel Gill, and Michael Andron. So today, and we have all of us today. It's been a few weeks since the whole gang was here, so we're happy about that. So today we're going to pick up where we left off last time in talking about geometric metaphor. And this was kind of a last minute thing when we were examining Stan's paper on the God of Abraham. And let's go ahead and show that. And again, I'll show you how to get there on your own. So this is our website, www.meru.org. And don't forget that little donate link here on the side. If you're able to do that, we would appreciate it. So we're going to keynote articles. Yes, keynote articles. And right here, you see the God of Abraham, a mathematician view. And we talked about this last time. We recommend you checking that out, the article itself. And God of Abraham, and we scroll down. We went through this last time, not in too much detail, but if you go all the way to the bottom of the article, you'll see this poster, and we'll click on this poster. And it's the continuous creation. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. And as Levana pointed out last time, this is a unique poster that probably can't be found anywhere else because Stan just threw everything on this poster to kind of emphasize what he was talking about in the article. But then he made other posters based on a lot of the elements that are on this one. So we're actually getting a lot here. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through all the different elements and see a lot of examples of what Stan called geometric metaphor. And next to the article, he, let's see if we can, there we go. Right next to the article, right next to the poster in the article, there's a paragraph which I will read. The illustration of continuous creation is an attempt to show how a range of spiritual metaphors from different traditions can be reconciled in one geometric model of the high contrast of wholeness and singularity. It shows some of the names by which the dimpled sphere torus is known in different cultures and spiritual traditions. In this model, continuous creation refers to the unbroken chain of life, seed, tree, fruit. Seed, tree, fruit, seed, tree. It represents the reflexive, self-organizing process that is the natural transformation and unfoldment of every seed, singularity, Tao, sun, via its tree, unfoldment, flame, world, mountain, into new fruit, wholeness, hand, world of its kind. It represents the general principle of the projection of life from life. It represents the general principle of the projection of life from life endlessly. It is a model of one cycle of singularity, unfoldment, and wholeness. Okay, Levana, what were you referring to in terms of this poster?
This particular poster was one that it was done in sequence, as you can kind of see, as he found more and more and more references. He kept adding them to the poster, which, making the printing smaller and smaller as he did it. This is an example of how he made his notes, how he coordinated his ideas. And eventually, once we published the book, you can find that elements of that poster broken out and spoken about separately in various different places, including in the end, where he has a whole section in an appendix on, um, a multicultural section. So anyway, that's what I was trying to convey, was that there this poster contains seeds of many different discussions that wound up being reflected in the book in different places. So with
Well,
that,
yeah,
we can pretty much start anywhere.
sure. Yeah. So let's have some fun with this. Can everybody see it well enough to see all the different elements on the poster on your
It's
screens?
it's still kind of small on the screen.
Yeah, let me see if I can. How's that?
That's much better.
So I can just scroll through it. I like to um, go to the thing that's the most obvious, right in the center,
Mm-hmm.
because that is a whole lot of stuff going on there on that one
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
image. Um, it's round, it's shaped like an apple, which it's supposed to be. Um, and as you can see to the right, top right, you can see the actual hand model itself. There's so much going on here. I don't even know where to start.
The first thing I would say is simply this figure, the outlined figure that you can see in kind of blue, the basic figure. That's what he's referring to in that paragraph by the words dimpled sphere. If you can think of this is a cross section of either a torus donut shape with like a little teeny weeny hole in the middle, so that it almost looks like a sphere, except not quite. Um, or you can take a sphere and think of it as just putting a dimple in it like this, with the center point basically being a single point or even nothing. Um, at any rate, this is a cross section, both this way and in perspective form this way.
Right, right, right. You can see the line going through the vertical line starting at the top and going through. He's calling it an axis mundi. I guess
Mm-hmm.
that's the right pronunciation. But it's a beautiful image. I mean, Plato's cave,
Mm-hmm.
the four rivers around Eden,
Mm-hmm.
um, the walking cypress tree. These are all various metaphors from different cultures. The manger, um, from the Christian perspective. Um, we see the earth plane, uh, the brass serpent. I mean, there's so much that he's referring to here. Um, I mean, I'm not even
Okay.
familiar with some
What,
of these things.
maybe pick one and we can go from there. Because that's like about five different references from different cultures
I
for
know that's what yeah,
this
I mean,
central figure.
exactly. Yeah, I'm just pointing things out. If anybody wants to elaborate on any of these, just jump right in. Um, if you go to the bottom of that image and you see Meru, Olympus, Ararat, Mount Sinai, four different mountains that are significant in different cultures and perspectives. World Mountain, the Round Table. Okay, there's a referring to the Arthurian legend.
Yeah.
There,
My eye goes to Macomb,
Mhm.
even though it's in small letters, because it means place in Hebrew, and it also refers to the divine. And I love that there's almost a line from Macomb going to manger, and just how different cultures view place as holy, and to just see that center is really, it's like the center of this whole thing is makom, even though it could also be the seed, or the sun. But my eye just went to makom as such a big word in Torah text.
Yeah. This reminds me of when he did this. Lavana, what's the book that was out at the time? This large book by, and it had all the different different cultural metaphors. It was, what was it called? It was, I'll have to look for it. It was real popular at the time. Each page had a different metaphor. I'm sorry, I'm blanking. I'll see if I can find it while we're talking.
I don't know.
There's so much. So if you go to the right of that image, you see Aladdin's lamp. And that comes from a Sufi kind of, or perhaps a more of a Muslim.
He was, he was being all inclusive, at the time that he was creating and using this poster as a way of seeing and concretizing how the same sense, the same kind of ideas were referred to in many different cultures. Later, he focused, more closely in on Hebrew tradition, which he was still doing at this time. This poster was originally created, I think, golly, back in the early 90s. So one of the things that I noticed, because I remember, is there are a lot of numerical references in here. There's 12 tribes, 12 ribs, the 12 signs of the zodiac. As I recall, weren't there 12 nights around the round table? That caught his attention. He was always looking for numerical correspondences. Let's see what else here. I even get kind of lost in here, to tell you the truth.
What stands out to you, Daniel?
I think it's interesting. It's the seed, the fruit tree yielding fruit whose seed is inside itself. It's kind of like, I never saw it before, but this is what happens when we make choices. This is how we learn. You make a choice, it yields something which yields fruit, for better or worse. It's an interesting thing in that all of it is inclusive, whether it's up or down. There's no real, if you make a choice that may seem negative, it could spiral down into this negative tree, but eventually it comes back around, and then you're right at the same spot where you started. But maybe in a elevated or even a lesser. I mean, even an idea that's learned is always elevating, whether or not you choose right or wrong. You're always going to learn something. That's why it says in the ethics of the ancestors, or the ethics of the fathers, as it's known, called Pirkei Avot, it says Lo habayshan lomed. If you're shy, you won't learn anything. So this is really what this. I've never even thought about it before, but this is how our choices work. This is how learning works, and it's what's neat about it is it's continuous. This is something that that occurs. I once asked a mystic. I said, "Well, what about we should all live long? What about when we leave the world? What happens? Do we stop learning?" And this very holy person said to me, "No, you never stop learning. The learning continues. It's just the physical based reality within which, the choices, the array of choices is much greater in a sense. But the learning never stops, right? And learning comes from choices. Learning comes from deciding to focus on one thing or another, or do one thing or another. So it also occurs to me that you know, in a certain way, the human process is extremely similar for all people. You know, we come into different cultures and we have different cultural, traditions or baggage, depending on where we are. But usually we have both. But the kind of the larger, the meta, I hope that word's not contaminated now, the meta look, this is the meta view, and it's showing us just, it's not even that we have so much in common, we're all connected, we're all one. And that's a source of strength when we do make mistakes, or when we, shall I say, when we have learning outcomes that are not entirely pleasant.
Is there something in this poster that really resonates with you, or is it just all? I mean, I'm seeing the Kiddish cup. I'm seeing a lot of different,
Well, I really like that he included the Arthurian legend. I think that's more important. I mean, I like that he included all of it: the Sufi and the crescent, the symbol that our Muslim brothers have chosen for their religion to some degree. I like that he includes all of this, and the harp and all these things. I think it's when you're deep into a culture, it's easy to forget that other cultures, mythologies and ways and traditions are really important, and we shouldn't discount them. And I really like that he included all that. And then I really like the way, if you just look at the angle of it, kind of starting here and coming up, that conical thing that then comes around and comes back in. I like that as just a symbol. It's a beautiful geometric metaphor in my mind right now for understanding how learning happens and how choice induces learning, the seed, or even before choice. Seed is almost like it's like not precognition, that's not what I mean, but like before you actually have the thought to do it, there's a seed in there, something that says, hey, you should do I want to do the following. It's like the will is before the choice. So I like that it does that, and then it kind of comes out, and then it comes back around, and you come back in, or the opposite, it comes down, it comes back. Like it's this, very captivating.
One thing I'd like
I want to actually point out something
Yeah.
here too. Every single one of these little glyphs, and even the verbal references, the words that he has, is actually a geometric metaphor. And you'd have to kind of dig into some of the words to understand what he was referring to. But, and you can see these geometric expressions of ideas from all different cultures. It goes back to the idea that we talked about much earlier in this series, that about geometry, in a sense, being a universal frame of reference for all of us because we live inside of geometry. We're physical creatures who live in this same 3D world. And so what he was exploring was his method of exploring the commonality of these spiritual and philosophical traditions was to look for and sense for common geometries. How is the flow of this thing expressed? What metaphors are used? Well, okay, is it a tree? Is it a hand? Is it a Plato's cave? And seeing how all of these ways of expressing particular geometric flows of things were common. And so that, I think that's the point that I wanted to make, was this is a way of seeing. He saw everything in terms of the geometry that all of us as physical creatures have in common. And that provided a way of viewing the spiritual traditions and focusing on those points, which could be expressed by the same geometry, just using different words to describe it.
Just one thing before I turn it over to you, Michael. I'd like everybody who's looking at this to try to imagine it animated and moving, because nothing is static, as Stan used to say. It's all about creation, and that's why it's called continuous creation, because it's ongoing, it's continuous. And so all of these images you're seeing a static version, you're seeing a photograph of something that's actually a movie. And at some point, we're hoping to be able to demonstrate that. Michael, you must see some things coming out at you on this poster. Unmute, please.
I'm still sitting here being blown away by the stuff Daniel was talking about. And the concept of thought and decision making and so on. It's almost as if this one page, the fact that it's in a page, brings to actual expression something that I was learning recently about Rav Kook, who was the first chief rabbi at the beginning of the 20th century. He was both a very practical guy and an incredible scholar and mystic and poet, and you pretty much name it. And he was talking about a quotation in the Talmud that, and I was just looking for it here, that the sage, the work of the sage is more effective than the words of the prophet. And in his spiritual history of the world, he wrote a short essay under that title, basically saying that if you look at human history, it started out with a very big picture way of looking at things, and the expression for the 400 years or so of the first temple there were prophets everywhere. I mean, all the famous prophets that we hear about from the Bible were alive and part of that. Then there was the destruction, which is, we're currently in that season of getting ready for Tisha B'Av, which is the day that both temples were destroyed. There was a destruction in 586, and then 70 years later, after being in exile, they came back, restored what we now call the Second Temple, and for the next 400 years, we were focused on particulars, not on big picture. And there are two ways of looking at things, and even within Judaism, the Kabbalist looks at the world one way, the Hasidic mind looks at it a different way. One trying to reach up to God, one trying to bring God down to us. We tend to think of our Judaism as a particularist thing. Those who are either observant or not observant of commandments will say, my God, there's like a gazillion rules. Just the rules of keeping the Sabbath, or the rules of keeping kosher. There's like hundreds and hundreds, and you can go on forever with this stuff. And it seemed to me that Stan had that ability as well, of both big picture and small picture. He understood the big concept, and even this chart has the big apple right there in the middle. I don't mean New York City, but has the big apple right there in the middle. And then every one of these others are the particulars. You could take a strand out of it, and one of the threads that would come out of this grand tapestry, and you could spend hours and hours, as in some cases we have already, just explicating and digging deeply into that one strand. And to be able to put together a page like this indicates that growing ability in the world. And according to the Talmud, where it says the sages will wander from city to city without finding welcome, there were plenty of times, as Lavana has pointed out, where we would go into some of these various groups and they would say, "Get out of here, you're nuts." And he would go. And he understood that wandering from city to city without finding welcome, they should have been excited about seeing the big picture and the small picture. I mean, you're talking about all of creation in an inverted T. How much big picture, small picture can you get? That's what I find fascinating about the page as a whole. I can't pick one that says to me something specific, but it's the whole concept of the page that speaks to me. And the things that Daniel added on to it that were not even mentioned in there. And I'm sure Stan knew that the page was only so big and could only replicate so big. And if you made the pictures that small, you couldn't see anything. You need one of those jeweler magnifying glasses to pull it in and zoom it out. You just have to keep scrolling up and down.
That's one of the
Bill.
reasons why for in the book, you know, the illustrations that in the alphabet that changed the world, that's in fact actually what we wound up doing is, you know, every single little glyph here, as well as the central figure, each had its, you know, its own
Yes.
discussion, its own page. But Michael, you hit on something, I think, because in fact, when he made this continuous creation poster, which evolved over many years, I can tell you, and got more and more and more dense, the message of the poster, what he was really expressing as he found each little thing that coordinated and how it coordinated, was the fact that it did coordinate, that there is a common weave to all of these threads of knowledge and of exploration, of spiritual and philosophical exploration and mathematical exploration. There's this common weave that can be found in traditions from all over our world. And that was what he was, I think, I know, attempting to express by including all of these things in one page.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I really invite our audience to spend some time going through this. I think everybody will find something to kind of grok onto. I mean, I keep finding things that I hadn't seen in any other of Stan's of graphic work, like King David's harp, you know, Horeb, Excalibur. If you go to the top, I mean, he did a poster on the tetrahedron, the tetrahelix column, which has the same total twist as the 310 torus knot. It was a model of DNA, the double helix. But also he adds here the 99 names of Allah, and also the rosary. Again, tying it into so many different cultural perspectives. Is there anything else anybody wants to say about this?
I just want to add on to what Michael said. If you even look at it, whatever way you go, it either starts with the big and goes to the small, and then comes back again, and then back again. Like this relationship is right in the geometry, going from the very, very smallest to the broadest. You know, it's also, and then the concept. There's also, I think, a reconception or a reorientation about God, which I think is really important. Which is that, you know, God is not an object. Like Stan always said, God in Hebrew, God is a verb. And what's neat about this is that central column. You know, the energy is always coming. It's up to you and I and and all beings to make choices and to learn. But the consistency of God is that he's giving the shefa, giving the energy to everyone equally. And that's that column running down the middle. And again, whether we find ourselves in a small place or a big place or needing to be in either, I mean, that's another, interesting thing. It's like sometimes we really need to be in a small place, and sometimes we really need to be in an expanded space, and knowing when those different times are and how to navigate. But
Yeah.
Let me
I have
bounce.
it.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Adele.
I have a,
Yeah. Oh, sorry. go ahead.
I think we all have something. Go ahead, Adele.
No, I just was thinking about the movement that Bill pointed out in the poster, and that the negative spaces that he pulled out, like the Kiddush cup, but there's also this strong two ovals that are really infinity on its side, and you can really see the infinity moving and the circle of the center moving and the spiral coming out of the center moving, and then this strong core center. But I think that the infinity, which is really huge and encompasses almost the entire object, is really the one, as well as the infinite line in the center. So I just wanted to point that out. The beauty of the motion in this.
Are you talking about the center graphic?
Yes, the center apple, the center graphic has two big ovals that
That's
are
right.
really motion in a figure 8 going on its side.
Yes. Okay.
And that motion seems as strong as the motion going this way, and maybe even turning the center so that the whole thing is spiraling, rotating.
Right. That's what
Yeah,
we
there's
want to
just
animate.
so much
That's
going
right.
on.
Yes. Yeah.
Continuing in a sense with what Adele just said about movement and motion, one way to think of this, the way that I perceive the motion in this figure is, if you notice, okay, he's got an arrow pointing downwards into the figure, and that's the energy that Daniel was talking about in terms of just the force of the shefa, the life force, which moment by every single moment, and even nano moments, keeps this creation, this place where we live, keeps it here. But in our perception, it's like that comes from like no place. The makom, the place in the very center, is where it emerges into our reality. And that creates the earth plane, which we know from previous discussions is also the what goes around comes around, the seasons, the cyclical time. And it also creates this reaching up to as close as we can get with the hand form, the purple form. And he called this in another paper the shape of information. That's our reaching up towards the infinite source as best we can get there, but we're physical and we come back down to the earth plane in the end. So it's constantly moving in every direction that you can imagine, but our reality has its constraints, and that's the geometry that you see. That's how I see this figure.
Yeah. This was before he came up with the inverted T concept.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a kind of an intrinsic element to this that incorporates the golden rule and Torah on one foot and all those things that came later. And we're talking about seeds. I think the seed of that is in this also. And that would come later. And it's interesting to look at it in retrospect, that concept.
I I wanted to add one thing here. That line going from top to bottom or bottom to top is in Kabbalistic thinking is called the kav, which means a line. And God created this bubble and then shot a light into it, and it exploded. And the whole idea of tikkun olam, of repairing the world, is gathering those sparks and putting them back together. It was all there. It's just the vessel was incapable of handling it all, kind of like us when we sit here and look at this page and say, can't handle all of this. It's too much. But the reference you just made, Bill, to the to some of his later work, the fact that we see all of these connections to different cultural paradigms is really important and is a source of hope. And in Hebrew, the word for hope is tikva. The national anthem is hatikva, the hope. The two center letters of the word tikva are kav, kuv vav, a line spelt the same way. It's that line is the hope line that every culture, you know, kind of like a post in the middle of the water, that everybody can grab onto a life preserver as the thing is coming in and down and moving, and drawing someone who's drowning to a safer and safer place as they come closer to the post, to that line. And it's a, in a world like we have today, having some center model that brings us to a feeling of hope is certainly something that we can all benefit from. That line around which every one of these pictures is rotating around that line, whether vertical, horizontal, any way that you see it, like Adele was saying, it's a source of hope. And for those who look at this from a Jewish worldview, they can track those. And for those who look at it from others, because he obviously can't include all of them, and certainly not with all of the connected images from other traditions, there's a limit to what will fit on the page. It is a source of hope that at some point man can get it all together and live without baseless hatred, which they say was the cause of the destruction of that second temple.
Yeah, it's almost like we're looking at a geometric, many perspectives of geometric construction of oneness, which is really what you're talking about, unity and oneness. You know, the Shema is based on that principle. Hashem Echad. So, you know, and when I look at this, it makes me think of Stan spending 10 years reading everything he could possibly get his hand on. And I could just picture him just making notes and the yellow, you know, tabs and everything like that every time he
pictures.
Yeah, just you know, just a wealth of information. And every time he's seeing, well, here's an example. And it reminds me of what he talked about, the scientific method of trying to disprove a theory. But every time he turned around, there was another example, you know, and he was so perceptive in seeing it. And here it is, all in as much as he could possibly fit on one page. And it's just incredible. So, you know, I invite folks to right click on this poster, and you can save the image, print it out, blow it up, put it on your wall. But just remember, it's copyright Meru Foundation. Please don't extract it without giving Stan Tenen credit for this. And think about all the years toil and work he spent coming up with these ideas. So please give credit where credit is due, but feel free to gain access to show this to people, because it's funny that it's hidden in this article, that we forgot about, and yet it's just for us here. It's just Disneyland, we're just enjoying this so much. So, feel free to just
Which park is that, Bill?
all of them.
Magic,
Tomorrowland,
definitely a Magic
Frontierland,
Kingdom.
Fantasyland. It's all of them. It's all built into this one poster. So
And for people who actually want to delve into the details of many of these little glimpses of other cultures or of the math involved, it's all in the book, folks, or a lot
yes,
of it is in the book.
that's right. And at some point, one of our goals when we digitize everything is to be able to click on all these images and have it lead us to, deeper explanations and who knows what. There's so much we can do with this. So give us your support, folks. Help support the Meru Foundation so that we can just build on these ideas and give it back to you. I mean, this is not for us. We want it for you, for the world. We want it, to make it as accessible as possible. So
that's one of the beautiful things about giving to something you care about, is that you become a conduit for that hopeful line. You become part of that conduit in a really, really beautiful way. And there's a teaching, I think it was by the Orach Chaim. This great rabbi lived in Jerusalem a couple hundred years ago, and close to 300 years ago, actually. And he says that the reason that we sometimes have extra money is so that we get the merit, not of having a comfortable life, but of being part of that line, being part of the giving that happens in the world. And so as opposed to just giving it to people who should have it, sometimes he says that God gives he gives a lot to certain people in order, not that they just have the physical, but they have a spiritual benefit also. They become part of this flow of energy into the world.
yeah, many people talk about money being a spiritual a conduit for that exact purpose, instead of the evil power that it becomes. So very good. Again, I'm going to print it out, and now that I've rediscovered this poster, so I invite you folks to do the same. So thanks for watching, and we've had a great session here, and we'll be back next time to cover more of Stan Tenen's work. So take care. Bye-bye.